10:43 a.m., September 12, 1944. Inside the concrete bunker of the Wolf's Lair in East Prussia, Adolf Hitler slammed his fist on the map table with such force that coffee cups jumped. He'd just received the morning's loss report from the Western Front. In the past 7 days, the Luftwaffe had lost a staggering 67 fighters to American P-47 Thunderbolts. 67 of Germany's best aircraft and pilots gone. What happened next would become one of the most humiliating orders in military history. Hitler, red-faced and trembling with rage, screamed at Reichsmarshal Hermann Goering, "I don't care what it takes. Order all units. They are to avoid the Thunderbolts. At all costs. Do you understand? At all costs." The supreme leader of the Third Reich had just ordered his air force to run from American fighters. The order was transmitted to every Luftwaffe squadron within hours. Commanding officers read it in disbelief. Veteran pilots who had fought since Poland felt their honor crumble. Young pilots fresh from training wondered if it was a mistake, but the order was clear, bearing Hitler's personal seal. Engagement with Republic P-47 aircraft is to be avoided, unless absolutely necessary for defense of critical targets. Pilots who unnecessarily engage P-47 formations will face court-martial. The mighty Luftwaffe, terror of Europe, had been officially ordered to flee from American college boys flying aircraft built by women in Long Island. What made the P-47 Thunderbolt so terrifying that Hitler himself intervened? The answer lay in a combination of engineering brutality and American excess that German designers never imagined possible. The P-47 was not elegant. Pilots called it the Jug because it looked like a flying milk jug. It was the heaviest single-engine fighter of the war, weighing 17,500 pounds, fully loaded. German pilots initially laughed when they first saw it, thinking something that heavy could never dogfight. They stopped laughing when they realized it could dive at 550 miles per hour, and its 850 caliber machine guns could saw a Messerschmitt in half from 1,000 yards away. Major Heinz Bahr, one of Germany's top aces with 220 victories, encountered his first P-47 on March 8, 1944, over Frankfurt. His after-action report, discovered in Luftwaffe archives after the war, reads like a horror story. "I positioned perfectly behind the American, certain of a kill. I fired a long burst from my cannons, directly into his fuselage from 200 meters. I saw strikes all over his aircraft. Pieces were flying off. Any other fighter would have disintegrated. This monster kept flying, as if nothing happened. Then he turned on me. I have never seen such firepower. The sky filled with tracers. My wingman exploded, simply ceased to exist. I dove away at maximum speed. The American followed me down at 600 kilometers per hour. My Messerschmitt was shaking apart. The Thunderbolt was still accelerating. I escaped only by pulling into clouds, at an altitude that should have killed us both. When I landed, I counted 47 holes in my aircraft. The American had fired for perhaps 2 seconds. The P-47's durability defied German understanding of physics. The Pratt & Whitney R2800 double Wasp engine was a 2,800 horsepower monster, with 18 cylinders arranged in 2 rows. It could take direct hits from 20mm cannon shells and keep running. There are documented cases of P-47s returning to base, with entire cylinders shot off. Running on 15 of 18 cylinders, the oil cooling system had redundant pathways. If one was severed, others would maintain pressure. The fuel system had self-sealing tanks that could take dozens of bullet holes. The pilot sat in an armored tub that could stop 20mm rounds. The windscreen was 38 millimeters of bulletproof glass. German pilots called it Der fliegende Panzer. the flying tank. But armor was only part of the story. The P-47's offensive capability was unprecedented. 8 Browning M2 50 caliber machine guns, 4 in each wing, with 425 rounds per gun. That's 3,400 rounds total, enough for about 30 seconds of continuous fire. But those 30 seconds delivered destruction that German pilots compared to flying into a steel storm. Colonel Hub Zemke, commander of the 56th Fighter Group, explained the psychology. "We taught our boys to fire in 2-second bursts. In those 2 seconds, 200 half-inch bullets would impact an area the size of a barn door. Nothing survived that. Not fighters, not bombers, nothing." The mathematics of destruction were simple and terrifying. Each 50 caliber round left the barrel at 2,900 feet per second. The 8 guns combined fired 100 rounds per second, a 1-second burst. Put 50 pounds of metal and incendiary into the target. German fighters, designed for fighting other European aircraft, armed with rifle-caliber guns or small cannons, simply disintegrated under this onslaught. The psychological effect was devastating. Luftwaffe pilot Franz Stiegler, who survived the war, described it. When those 8 guns opened up, it looked like the Thunderbolt was breathing fire. The sound was distinctive, not the ripping canvas sound of our guns, but a deep, industrial hammering, like a factory of death. What truly broke German morale was the P-47's ability to switch roles from fighter to bomber instantly. With a 2,500-pound bomb load and 8 5-inch rockets, a P-47 could destroy a tank column, then climb back to altitude and shoot down the fighters sent to stop it. On August 7, 1944, near Mortain, France, a squadron of P-47s from the 405th Fighter Group caught a German panzer division in the open. In 17 minutes, they destroyed 47 tanks, 28 trucks, and when the Luftwaffe arrived to defend, shot down 9 Me-109s without loss. The surviving German tank commander radioed, "We are being murdered from the air. Request permission to withdraw." The response from German High Command, "Hold position." His final transmission, "Then we die here." The Republic Aviation Factory in Farmingdale, New York, was producing 30 P-47s per day. By late 1944, 30 per day. The entire German aircraft industry was producing 40 fighters of all types daily and losing 50. The math was inexorable, but it wasn't just quantity. Each P-47 rolling off the assembly line was better than the last. Improved engines, better armor, more powerful armament. The P-47 D-25 model introduced a bubble canopy for better visibility. The P-47M had a 2,800 horsepower engine that could reach 473 miles per hour. The P-47N had range to reach Japan. German pilots were flying the same Me-109s, designed in 1935 with minor improvements. They were bringing knives to a gunfight, where Americans kept showing up, with bigger guns. The psychological warfare aspect of Hitler's order cannot be overstated. When Luftwaffe squadrons received the directive to avoid P-47s, morale didn't just drop, it shattered. Lieutenant Wolfgang Fischer of JG-11 wrote in his diary, "Today, we received the order that made us women. We are to run from the Americans, not engage tactically, not conserve strength for better opportunities. Run. I joined the Luftwaffe to be a warrior. Today, I became a coward by order of the Führer himself." Within weeks, desertions increased 400%. Pilots would claim mechanical failures rather than fly missions where P-47s were reported. Some deliberately damaged their own aircraft. The order created a cascade of tactical disasters. German ground forces, accustomed to Luftwaffe protection, suddenly found themselves naked under American air attack. On September 19, 1944, near Aachen, the 116th Panzer Division was caught in the open by P-47s from the 366th Fighter Group. With no German fighters willing to engage, the Thunderbolts spent 45 minutes systematically destroying the division. Tank Commander Hauptmann Kurt Becker survived to testify, "They came in waves. First the bombs, then rockets, then those terrible guns. We called for air support. Command told us our fighters were engaged elsewhere. We could see them, circling at high altitude, watching us die. They would not come down." The Americans owned the air from ground level to the clouds. Colonel Francis Gabreski, the top P-47 ace in Europe with 31 aerial victories, understood the German predicament. "Once we realized they were under orders to avoid us, it became a turkey shoot. We'd split our squadrons. Half would go hunting at high altitude, forcing German fighters to run or climb higher. The other half would attack ground targets unopposed. If the Germans came down to defend, the high squadron would bounce them. If they didn't, we'd destroy their army piece by piece. It was systematic annihilation." The technical superiority of the P-47 went beyond raw power and armor. The turbo supercharger system was a marvel that German engineers couldn't replicate. While German fighters gasped for air above 20,000 feet, the P-47's engine produced full power at 30,000 feet. The turbine spun by exhaust gases, compressed incoming air, maintaining sea-level pressure in the engine at extreme altitude. This meant P-47s could climb above German fighters, dive on them with overwhelming speed, and climb away before the Germans could react. Luftwaffe ace Adolf Galland called it fighting ghosts that strike from heaven. The maintenance simplicity of the P-47 added another layer of American advantage. The engine could run on lower-grade fuel if necessary. Parts were interchangeable between aircraft. A P-47 could be serviced by mechanics who had been building tractors 6 months earlier. German fighters required specialized parts, specific fuel grades, and expert maintenance. As Germany's infrastructure crumbled under bombing, their aircraft became increasingly unreliable. American P-47s kept flying from muddy fields in France, maintained by farm boys from Iowa, using tools that would have horrified German engineers. On October 2, 1944, the consequences of Hitler's order reached their logical conclusion. Major Günther Rauhl, one of Germany's most decorated aces with 275 victories, led his squadron of 12 Me-109s on a patrol over the Rhine. They encountered a formation of B-17 bombers, escorted by P-47s from the 353rd Fighter Group. Following Hitler's orders, Rauhl ordered his pilots to avoid the escorts and attack the bombers from a different angle. The P-47s, realizing the Germans wouldn't engage them, split their formation. 4 stayed with the bombers, 8 went hunting. In 7 minutes, 9 German fighters were shot down. Rauhl himself was severely wounded, losing his thumb and spending 8 months in the hospital. His final combat report stated, "The order to avoid P-47s has made us predictable. They know we will run. They plan accordingly. We cannot win if we cannot fight." The ground attack capability of the P-47 created a new kind of warfare. On December 23, 1944, during the Battle of the Bulge, weather cleared enough for air operations. In a single day, P-47s flew 1,047 ground attack sorties, destroying 363 German vehicles, 55 tanks, and 18 locomotives. German soldier Feldwebel Hans Müller wrote home, "The Thunderbolts are everywhere. They hunt us like wolves. A single plane can destroy an entire convoy. Our fighters fly high above, watching, never coming down to help. We curse them as much as we curse the Americans." One incident perfectly captured the hopelessness of the German situation. On November 11, 1944, Lieutenant Colonel John C. Meyer of the 352nd Fighter Group encountered a formation of 60 German fighters near Hanover. Meyer was alone, separated from his squadron by clouds. Instead of avoiding combat, he attacked. The Germans, following Hitler's orders and seeing the distinctive profile of a P-47, scattered. Meyer shot down 3 before they escaped. When he landed, he had used less than 20% of his ammunition. One American pilot had routed 60 German fighters simply by showing up. The production statistics tell the complete story of industrial dominance. Republic Aviation built 15,686 P-47 Thunderbolts during the war. Each one required 65,000 man-hours to build. That's over 1 billion man-hours of American labor, much of it performed by women who had never seen an aircraft factory before Pearl Harbor. The factory floor at Farmingdale covered 67 acres under one roof. Workers rode bicycles between stations. The employee parking lot held 15,000 cars, more automobiles than existed in some German cities. This wasn't just aircraft production. It was democracy proving that free people, properly motivated, could outproduce any totalitarian system. The armament production alone boggled German minds. Each P-47 carried 3,400 rounds of 50 caliber ammunition. With thousands of P-47s in service, America was producing and shipping millions of rounds monthly. Each round was manufactured to precise specifications, tested and shipped across the Atlantic. German factories were running out of brass for cartridge cases, substituting steel that corroded and jammed guns. American ammunition was so well made that captured stocks were prized by German forces. The quality gap was as devastating as the quantity gap. Lieutenant General Adolf Galland, commander of German fighter forces, wrote in his post-war memoir, "The P-47 Thunderbolt was not just superior to our fighters, it represented a completely different philosophy of war. We built fighters to be flown by expert pilots in single combat. Americans built flying weapons platforms that average pilots could use to deliver massive firepower. We were artists, they were engineers. In war, engineering beats art." Even the paint on P-47s told a story of American abundance. The olive drab and grey scheme used multiple coats of primer and finish that protected against corrosion, improved aerodynamics, and could be easily repaired in the field. German aircraft by 1944 often flew in bare metal because paint was considered a luxury. The American paint alone cost more than some German engines, but it meant P-47s could sit on wet airfields for weeks and still fly perfectly, while German planes corroded in days. These aren't just statistics from forgotten archives. These are the moments that determined whether democracy or fascism would shape the future. My grandmother worked at Republic Aviation, one of thousands of women who built these magnificent machines. She said they knew every rivet mattered, that American boys' lives depended on their work. Those P-47s brought 15,000 pilots home, who otherwise would have died. If these stories of American industrial might and sacrifice resonate with you, if preserving the legacy of the arsenal of democracy matters, then YouTube's Super Thanks button directly funds accessing more classified documents. More veteran interviews before we lose them forever. Each Super Thanks helps me spend weeks in archives instead of creating clickbait. This is about honoring those who gave us the freedom we enjoy today. The humiliation of Hitler's order went even deeper. By ordering the Luftwaffe to avoid P-47s, Hitler essentially admitted that German technology, German training, and German courage were insufficient. The master race was running from aircraft built by women and minorities in America, flown by boys who had been civilians 2 years earlier. Propaganda Minister Joseph Goebbels tried to suppress news of the order, but Allied radio broadcasts made sure every German soldier knew their air force had been ordered to flee. Captain Robert S. Johnson, flying with the 56th Fighter Group, scored 27 victories in his P-47, making him one of the top American aces. His most famous engagement illustrated why Hitler's order was issued. On June 26, 1943, Johnson's P-47 was badly damaged by an FW-190. The German pilot, unable to shoot down the rugged Thunderbolt despite expending all his ammunition, pulled alongside, saluted and flew away. Johnson counted 200 bullet holes in his aircraft. The engine was hit. The controls were damaged, the canopy was shattered, yet the P-47 flew him 200 miles home. Johnson later said, "Any other fighter would have been scrap metal. The Jug just shrugged it off and kept flying." The final insult came in the form of cost-effectiveness. The P-47 cost $85,000 in 1944 dollars. Expensive by American standards, but America built 15,686 of them anyway, because they could, because the aircraft's capability justified the cost. Germany struggled to build 1,000 of their jet fighter Me-262s, which might have changed the air war because they couldn't afford them. This wasn't just losing a war. This was being economically crushed by an enemy that treated your best technology as a minor budget item. The stories from German pilots who survived encounters with P-47s read like testimonies from disaster survivors. Oberleutnant Hans Joachim Marseille, before his death in 1942, had written about fighting Spitfires and Hurricanes as chess matches of skill. His successor in JG-27, Oberleutnant Werner Schröer, wrote about fighting P-47s. "This is not combat, this is survival. You see them coming from impossible altitude, diving at speeds that should tear their wings off. You have seconds to decide, engage and die, or run and live with shame. Most of us chose shame. The few who chose honor are dead." The impact on German ground forces was catastrophic. General der Panzertruppe Hermann Balck, one of Germany's most successful tank commanders, wrote, "The P-47 changed armored warfare. We could no longer concentrate our forces. We could no longer move in daylight. A single Thunderbolt could destroy a tank company in minutes. Our proud panzer divisions became scattered, hidden, impotent. We won battles at night and lost them at dawn when the Thunderbolts arrived." By December 1944, the situation had become so desperate that some Luftwaffe pilots openly defied Hitler's order. On December 17th, during the opening phase of the Battle of the Bulge, Major Heinz Bahr led 6 Me-109s in an attack on P-47s from the 352nd Fighter Group. It was a massacre. 5 German fighters were shot down in 3 minutes. Bahr survived with 32 bullet holes in his aircraft. At his court-martial for disobeying the Führer's order, Bahr defended himself. "I chose to die as a fighter pilot, rather than live as a coward. If that is a crime, then I am guilty." He was sentenced to death, later commuted to combat duty in the suicidal Me-163 rocket fighter program. The technological gap kept widening. In January 1945, P-47s began carrying the new 5-inch high-velocity aircraft rockets, HVARs, nicknamed Holy Moses by pilots. Each rocket had the destructive power of a 5-inch naval shell. A P-47 could carry 10 of them, plus bombs, plus its 8 guns. On January 23rd, 4 P-47s from the 362nd Fighter Group attacked a German ammunition train near Euskirchen. The entire train, 47 cars of explosives, detonated in a blast that was heard 30 miles away. windows shattered in towns 5 miles from the explosion. German reports described it as apocalyptic. The human cost behind these statistics was staggering. By war's end, P-47s had destroyed 9,000 locomotives, 86,000 railway cars, 68,000 trucks, 6,000 armored vehicles, and 11,000 enemy aircraft. Each number represents lives changed, families destroyed, a nation's war machine systematically dismantled. But for the pilots flying these missions, it was intensely personal. Captain Jerry Johnson of the 359th Fighter Group recalled, "Every time I squeezed those triggers, I knew I was saving American infantry from facing those tanks. Every train we stopped meant supplies that wouldn't reach the front. We weren't just fighting, we were protecting our brothers on the ground." The legacy of Hitler's order extended beyond the war. Luftwaffe veterans who survived spoke of it as the moment German military honor died, General der Jagdflieger Adolf Galland said in a 1970 interview. When a nation's leader orders its warriors to flee from battle, that nation has already surrendered its soul. The P-47 didn't just defeat the Luftwaffe, it forced us to defeat ourselves. In the final analysis, the P-47 Thunderbolt represented everything that made American victory inevitable. Industrial might that could produce 30 fighters per day, technology that turned farm boys into angels of death, engineering that prioritized pilot survival and mission success over elegance, and most importantly, a democratic system that could mobilize millions of free people to build, fly, and maintain these magnificent machines. What hits you hardest about this story? Was it Hitler's humiliating order? The devastating firepower of 850 caliber guns? The image of German fighters fleeing while their ground forces burned below? Or the fact that American women built the planes that broke the Luftwaffe's spirit? Drop your family's connection to this history in the comments. My viewers, you folks have shared some truly incredible stories. Grandfathers who soared through the skies flying the jug. Grandmothers who were on the factory floor, building them piece by piece. Even German Americans who shared the stories of relatives who faced them in the skies. Every single comment, every shared memory, it all helps preserve this vital history. Let's commit ourselves, right here and right now, to ensure that these stories, these tales of American triumph and German tragedy, are never, ever forgotten. They deserve to be remembered.